know how. I've been wondering how that all lines up. But does it have to do with phase relationship?
Not at all. Not at all. It's just that there's a couple of different ways, because what we've got is we don't have an LFE. We don't have a subwoofer, right? We have left, center, right, left surround, right surround. Those are the typical things. And I first put them in a order of LCR, left, center, right, in that order. But it says in my SoundForge, it defaults to 6 tracks. So, because usually 5.1, so you have the subwoofer on it. And then I opened the properties of it, and it said the SMPTE properties of what the things are, which is left, right on the first pair, and then center subwoofer, and then left surround, right surround on the 6 tracks. So I took them all and changed them, and these are huge files. Take hours to put together. So I changed them to that, and then when I brought them into Paul, he goes, no, these are supposed to be left, center, right, left surround, right surround, the way I had it first, and in a 5-channel file. So what I've been doing the last 24 hours and continuing is reordering channels within these huge files. So that's what I found out recently. Good morning, everyone. It looks like we've actually started.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Daryl, I believe you're the host.
I am?
Well, I mean, literally.
Daryl's a great host.
I don't think I am a very good host, but I can try.
Someone give this man a TV show.
I see him on mine. Yeah.
Well, I have a question or something to put on the table, and I would love to hear especially word from Christian on this topic, and Ian, and probably Stephen, because they might know the answer to this question. Let's imagine we have access to a famous musician who's deceased, and that famous musician has left behind a catalog of unreleased music, and we have all the legal rights to release that music. Can we create a token for that artist? Let's imagine we've got a deep catalog and we're saying, here's the original music, here are the multi-tracks, here is the remixes, we're going to make duets with it, we're going to create for this particular artist, whoever it might be. The idea is, has it ever been done to use the assets of somebody from the past, create a token around them? That way the token that comes in is able to further help finance the use of these songs.
I mean, sure, you could if you've got all the legal rights,
Mm-hmm.
right? You could do whatever you want. I just don't necessarily see a value yet.
So I guess the concept would be, if someone were buying a token for an artist, is it something that's worth doing? Would it, and if it was a famous artist, naturally, would it be something worth doing, and would it help build an online ecosystem, financial ecosystem, one for a future arts and entertainment system, but number two, in helping bring attention and raise money for those assets for that musician?
Functionally, it's been done by David Bowie with his Bowie bonds. He actually securitized his future work.
Tell me about that.
Well, you can look it up. It's on Wikipedia. Bowie bonds. So that's in a different world. That was in the 90s.
What's the question, Fabian? Can you just simplify it?
Sure. So let's imagine David Bowie left behind a bunch of songs that have never been released. And we, as RSong, had an opportunity to release those songs. Now, granted, it would probably cost tens of millions of dollars in the normal world. That's what a Sony or a Spotify would put down for it. But in our economy, in our world, there are creative ways of being able to generate money to get those assets. And one of those would be a token generating event, or an ICO. So the question is it possible? I imagine it is possible. I'm just trying to figure out, how would one actually do it?
Yeah, it's already been done by Singular DTV. Now, it's questionable who's actually using the technology and how impactful the technology is, but They've created a mechanism where anyone can go in and tokenize their work. Among other modules they've developed, they released that software last October, I think, after 2 years of development. Where they're at now, I don't know. I know they have a shitload of Ether raised from their ICO, so they're probably still developing. But yeah, I haven't touched base in a while.
What's the name of the platform?
I'll write it in the chat.
Thank you.
A couple of thoughts too. One would be who controls ownership of the compositions, and the other would be if said person was extremely famous, there would probably be some type of estate that would want to, who would probably be quite upset if they were not included in these discussions.
Well, that's who you negotiate with.
They would have to be. They would have to be involved. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but I mean, the question is, what are you using the token for? What does the token do?
Yeah, if it's access, it kind of makes sense.
Access to what?
Access to the catalog. Like this is how you stream the catalog, or how you stream it in a proprietary 3D format, for example.
Yes. Versus it just being out and open to anybody to play with. In this aspect, if you acquire the token, then you have access to actually listening to the music.
Could be
a quarter into a jukebox.
And you could
let's think about that, right? So is it useful to have 50 different tokens for access to the 50 different the 50 different catalogs that are associated with 50 different artists? Would people find that convenient, or would they find that rather inconvenient because they have to keep 50 different kinds of tokens in their app and be able to sort through them and handle all the market dynamics and all of that, right? I mean, the user experience now gets really, really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly why I stopped working on that project, because it's not even 50, Greg. It's like they want 5 million. Right?
No, of course. That's what I'm saying. It becomes really it becomes cumbersome, and what most people want is simplification, right? Or they want just enough gamification that they can handle, but not too much more.
Well, my Roku has dozens of channels that I have to that are not aggregated for me now. We are in a disintegrated point right now as far as VOD and that type of thing. So, as an example, not that it ain't that it's good. Actually, it's really frustrating, but that's where we are at some points in the.
All right.
But if it were let's see if we can make something out of the idea. The question is, I know the kids really, really enjoyed trading baseball cards, right? That was a kind of gamification from the past that people really enjoyed. So the question is there something like that kind of behavior that could be supported by such a token? Like one of the things that I have thought about for a long time is a kind of digital venue, where if you do have access to a token, you can enter into that venue. So the venue enables you to have experiences that are associated with the creation of particular artifacts. The example I've given before is, you can imagine that there's a very tightly controlled electronic venue whereby the California Guitar Trio first just gets together to share some snippets of song ideas that they're working on before they get together in person to work out what they're going to put on their next album. And then after they've gotten together and they've gone into the studio, then they use that electronic venue to share mixes, right? And then ultimately they feel confident about some of them, and then they invite more people into the venue, some friends and family, and trusted pairs of ears to who might have access to that. And then they invite a graphic artist to the venue who starts, proposing some designs. And then, pretty soon they feel like they've gotten something, something close to what the album's going to be. And so they invite maybe 10, 50, 100 people to help, gauge the initial market reaction, right? And then when the album drops and the tour dates are
on, that's 500 years deep, about a reformation in the culture that is absolutely required to our survival. There's criticism of this technological process that must be incorporated into the conversation at a very, very deep cultural level. And this is where music comes from. This is where our popular music comes from. Again, it wasn't a service transaction. It wasn't a service provider fee by which these rhythms have informed and animated us. And so these are some of the things on my mind right now. Sorry if I'm causing any problems for anybody.
Not at all.
There are certain frequencies of light that need to be shined, or else you're just under fluorescence. When you walk outside, the sun shines. There's a lot more frequencies of light than when you're in your basement with a studio tan. So thank you for exposing at least the existence of the light, even if it's only reflected and not direct at this point. So,
what do you think is the solution, Rich?
Well, for one, I think when middle-aged Caucasian men of great facility get around in a circle and they really want to do something on behalf of the world, they need to break, go out and bring other people into the conversation. And that pressure has really been building up on me in this community. So I've reached out to people. Like I say, I feel like bombing the conversation because, hey, I love some of the music y'all are into, but there's so much more, and there's more in I hear people moaning about the 60s and the political music that we need to bring back for the 60s. The political people are political and they're making music and it's there. There aren't times. There isn't one particular venue of consciousness that is the measure of a universal. There is a moment, but there's a multiplicity of communities approaching the catastrophe in different ways. And what we need now are talents of formal interoperability between so that we can see the formal system in one community and the formal system in another and figure out how to translate metaphors and do this very quickly. And music is an ideal medium for this. And but to sit for a couple of months with the same technologists representing the same narrow slice, it's infuriating. So yeah, I'm here for at least this meeting. I'm here for another 28 minutes. I don't know about the next time. The community needs to be a community. And I'll say it again, I've said these things before. A community is not a bunch of like-minded people that get together and share a pool or something. A community, in order to be a community, the test of a community is it includes people you don't know, aliens that you despise, or people you know so well. They're just so infuriating, but they remain in the circle because there is community. That's what a community is. And so anyway, hey, Robert Fripp, all the way. I love it. But let's get Erykah Badu. Whatever. There's a million people that should be part of the conversation. So again, these are my thoughts. End of rant.
Yeah, that was great. It was great. One thing when Greg was talking about education, one thing that immediately popped into my head is even this morning I was watching a YouTube video. I've been producing music for 30 years, and I still have a lot to learn. And so I was watching a video of this hip hop producer using the same DAW that I use, showing unique ways to manipulate drum sounds. And I learned so much from just watching a YouTube video. And I can just imagine a format, a platform that we're building that helps to monetize that contribution, the attention economy aspect of things. It's just like, I just re-listened to the audiobook of Who Controls the Future? Is that what it's called? The Jaron Lanier's second last book. Who Owns the Future? Who Owns the Future? And he actually talks about what we're doing as a solution halfway through the book. I think we should approach him. I mean, he's basically describing the idea of giving value back to the data that we are contributing to the platform, and really ultimately that's the mistake that we've gone on. Back in the late 90s, we all believed in the information wants to be free. All of us techno hippies or whatever we were back in the 90s, and we kind of followed the Richard Stallman mantra or the John Perry Barlow mantra. And what ended up happening is all our information started getting siphoned up by the big siren servers, as Jaron calls it. And now we're kind of at this stage where the biggest companies in the world own all our data. And we have to kind of somehow figure out a way to kind of rejig that model so that we are in control of our data and we are the ones who are benefiting from it. So, sorry, that was nothing to do with what you were talking about, Rich, but it kind of was, though.
Well, I definitely see some threads here. I mean, I definitely would love to see more community building. I reached out to Nora to bring her into the conversation, and I would love to bring other people into the conversation. I could definitely bring in people from the sub-art community if we wanted to bring people in from the sub-art community. So that's a pretty different community than the one we've got going on here. Then I really enjoy and appreciate the energy that we find within the African communities. It's genuinely amazing. But the question is, how to do that in a way that feels organic, right? And I think that's the one I really want to follow. I want to take, I don't necessarily know all the steps, but I want that the next step has a certain feeling quality to it. So, Rich, if you got people that you want to bring to the call, the Zoom room number is, the Zoom room number, you can share it, and the time, you can share it. That would be great. I think part of what attracts me is again this idea of beginning to practice community organization around specific pointed actions that have obvious value and utility individually, but then when they're pieced together one at a time, they begin to create a tile work of effective action. So I'll give an example entirely outside of the RSong discussion. I was down in SF this week giving a keynote at SF Blockchain Week, and after my talk, I met with one of the RSong portfolio companies called Testloop. And Testloop began essentially with the realization that Teslas represented essentially a new kind of near indestructible. A lot of their cars have over 450,000 miles on them, and they're within this company, and they're you can't even tell. They're going to go for at least 1 million miles. But the car is not just a mode of transportation; it's also a digital platform, and it connects into a network, and it has a self-driving capabilities, which are only going to increase over time. And so what they've been doing, they started off with just building a kind of a shuttle service and a rental service using Teslas. But what they're aiming for, and you can see this with the platform that they're launching today, unofficially, and then Monday officially, which is called CarMiQ, CARMIQ, is an open platform in which anyone with a Tesla can connect their car to the network and then gain access to a number of different service providers, everyone from insurance providers to Firestone and Goodrich and tire providers who will help manage the lifetime of the tire, because they're getting live stream data about the tire. Similarly, it allows you to rent out your Tesla, or to gain access to a Tesla in another city. So again, it's kind of car as platform, and networked car in a network platform. And you might think that, oh well, this is uh, toys for rich people. But the reality is that if you get a fleet of 1 million of these, for a population that's about 5 to 10 times that size, um, then you're saving tons and tons of CO2 within a very, very short period of time. And so it has this knock-on effect of organizing people in this sort of subtle way. The people, it maybe starts with a lifestyle choice, but it slowly morphs into this thing where their consumption patterns and the overall supply chain management patterns shift, and they shift in what, at least on paper, starts to look like a dramatically positive way. And I feel like these kinds of shifts can and need to be supported by the attention that comes when a community is galvanized through music. If there's a way that an artist who's inspired by this approach to shifting behavior can write a song, right? If Will Ferrell or I don't know, sorry, wrong genre, but if someone comes along and writes a rap song, or a guitar, the singer-songwriter style song that really captures people's imagination, that helps accelerate these kinds of shifts. And then if there's a similar kind of organization around community events that help with these shifting these behaviors, that's where I think I would personally love to see the power of music applied, because it does have this coordinating, harmonizing, synchronizing effect on people. And I think it can provide the necessary energy to shift our patterns of behavior. Because if you look at the UN report, in order to get under the wire with respect to the 1.5 degrees Celsius bar, the change in consumption and supply chain management behavior is unprecedented. We've never seen this kind of demand on the shift in people's behavior. So we have to do this, we can't do it in a heavy-handed way. It has to be organic. It has to be fun. It has to be lighthearted. and deadly serious all at the same time. And that's kind of how I would love to, see our efforts, especially in these calls, is like, how do we take next steps to apply what we've got to that particular problem? And maybe that helps us figure out ways to reach into the community and begin to tap into folks and help them, help them help us use the platform to create and support these kinds of behavioral shifts, because we got to do it. We got no time. 12 years is a blink of an eye. I can remember when, my 14-year-old, I mean, it's just like it was a blur from when my 14-year-old was 2.
2006.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Greg, will all of RSong's employees and business partners stop taking flights? Do I need to sell my car? Do we need to start laying down the street and just, breaking down the system? Because, Tesla's $2 billion in debt, right? And the only reason why they're really able to conduct business is because they've gotten massive subsidies from the government and taxpayers. So, and really it's a representative government run by corporations. So you can't really say that's like the people want Tesla. I don't know if we want Tesla, right? Like, how much energy does it cost to mine the lithium batteries necessary? I mean, they're not lithium, but you understand what I'm saying? Like, there's
I do understand. I've thought a lot about that. I've thought when I was talking with Rahul, the founder of Testloop and Karmic, and I was probing to see whether or not their particular approach really does take into account the whole supply chain and associated with the development of the platform itself. And at least initially, and that's why I said initially, on paper, it looks quite promising. And when I looked at his offering, because his offering is different, right? Testloop, just has a fleet of Teslas, and it's more like a ride share kind of thing, or a rental thing, rather than Tesla itself. But when I looked at the overall offering, I could just behind Rahul, I could see Elon Musk smiling, right? Because this was, I could see that this was the kind of thing he was hoping would arise as a result of delivering the platform that he was delivering. I agree with you that we have to begin at home. Like, our chain has to think very, very carefully about, modeling the behavior that we want to see in the community. Absolutely. But a part of that is having this dialogue, having a dialogue like this, where we begin to consciously and deliberately talk about how can the music community support the shifts in consumption and supply chain management behavior, because that is the number one thing we have to do now.
I have an idea about that.
What's that?
I have an idea about that.
Yes, please.
Well, I think, it's so important, like, that the musician community and the entire artist community registers people to vote, because, as we saw in that report, there are about 100 companies that are responsible for over 70% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So I think it's really important that if we get a lot of young people out to vote, that we vote in politicians who care about ending things like Citizens United, and we're able to get a lot of this dark fossil fuel money out of politics.
That's not going to happen. The only state in the United States where dark money is not allowed in elections is Montana.
Okay, well, I have a different attitude, which is a lot more optimistic, but that's fine. I just was saying.
I don't have any optimism in the United States government at this point.
Well, that's
I
pretty
think
clear.
we're headed towards a net citizenship, if anything. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to criticize you on that point, but that's exactly what the Russians want Americans to do, is distrust our government. I'm just saying, I believe that the artistic
We've done, yeah. I mean,
and
it's not
musicians.
Russians at all. It's the United States.
One thing I would like to request is that we adopt two attitudes. One is an attitude of communication that allows each other to finish or complete our thoughts, and the other is a kind of yes and attitude. So I know there's going to be a lot of passion around this, and if we're going to have meaningful conversations, passions will be arising, and in order to best utilize the energy of that passion, I think we have to create a safe container where it's safe for people to express their passion. Let's kind of adopt those two basic rules when we have these conversations, if that's okay. So
I'd like
Nora,
to.
why don't you pick it up?
Me?
Yes, please.
Well, I was just saying, I think, there's historic precedent for musicians, people like Nina Simone and, the Beatles and, Jimi Hendrix and tons throughout history that have, helped change the tide on a lot of issues by getting a lot of young people to care about politics. And right now, as was pointed out, there's a lot of distrust in our political system. And I think that that's warranted, but we have an opportunity to elect people who do represent us. And I think that that is going to be key if we want to tackle all these companies that have abused the planet. And, that's all I'm saying, is I think that approach is going to help,
I want to go yes and to what Nora is saying, and say that this is exactly why, despite some of my misgivings, I'm in this conversation, because I want to be involved. I want to have a tool, a money tool that's smart enough that I can support myself and do what I want to do with my friends and trusted communities without putting money in the hands of the 70 corporations that are listed in the UN document. And I think that through communities based in trust and intentionality, we can hack the incentive structure, because that's really what's misaligned. I'm not absolutely anti-capitalist or whatever, but I think that our incentive game, the gamification of survival, has been misaligned so that it is not leading us towards survival. And so hacking it from the ground up makes sense to me. And I think if it makes sense to me, it's going to make sense to more people as well. If I can have money smart enough that it doesn't help the effort to take poison out of the ground and put it in the atmosphere, that would be great. And I'll stop there. I mean, there's more, but I'll stop. End of read.
Completely agreed. But, I'll just say, I went vegan in 2015 for basically the whole year. And I realized once I drilled down into it, it was basically impossible not to give my money to some company that was abusing animals, even if I wasn't eating any or wearing any. And so my idea, and I think a lot of millennials' ideas, is maybe we don't have to throw out all these companies and say, okay, to hell with, all of these companies that basically every human being interacts with every day. Maybe there's a way that we can put government and private pressure on them to get them to change their ways. I think a great example of that is a company like BP, which is, known for making a lot of mistakes, but they're also, really trying to innovate as well. So I don't know. I don't think necessarily the idea is to blacklist all these companies. Maybe we could give them a grace period of a year or two and say, hey, if you're not willing to change by this point, then, we're through with it. That's just my idea, because I think they'd rather innovate and help the situation than just go down in history as being these awful polluters. But maybe they're much more horrible than I think. I don't know.
Well, that's an easy, well, not easy. That's the thing that I try and approach in coffee. It's why I pushed helping with La Marzocco and Starbucks, because right now the competitors are Sara Lee and Walmart, right? There are companies that they're not ideal, they're not saints, but it is the right direction. Even if it's a small step, it's still a step in the right direction.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Christian, I didn't mean to silence you. That wasn't my aim. If
But that's my response, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, people are going to have to stop completely believing in the system. I'm sorry, but it's so far gone that there's just no way, dude. There's no way in 12 years you're going to be able to have the pockets of resistance built up if we're literally accepting that Tesla is going to save us. Right? Corporations are not going to save us. We have to pull all the capital and all the resources out of these institutions and redirect them. And we need to do that extremely fast. And like, these conversations are helpful, but at the end of the day, I mean, I'm going to have to start going downtown and getting involved with the anti-Trump rallies in the city and otherwise, because at the end of the day, that's in the streets. Right? And fair enough, the guys who are engineers and the coders, such as yourself, who have different levels of intelligence and thinking, may be able to do things differently. But for people that have no skills and resources in that department, are just going to have to pick up the tools and go to the streets. I don't see a way out, dude. There's no other way. And this is why I had that conversation with you 2 weeks ago. Is it the military or the corporate world for young people? There's only two options. I don't see any middle ground. I mean, this retreat back into farms and into the forest and doing what Burning Man, this whole ecological, like, we can just sweat it out in the sweat lodge. It'll be fine. That's not going to work, dude. It's not going to work. So I'm very serious about this.
And I know, I just, that's very funny to imagine people saying that. And I'm sure they do, the sweat it out in the sweat lodge thing. I just think it's very funny. I'm sorry.
I mean, that's the whole thing about, like,
right.
You ever heard about this place called like Esalen in Big Burr?
Yeah.
It's $6,000 to go to these seminars, right? It's ridiculous, dude. These
I love Esalen.
Talk about taking DMT and LSD and tripping out and how great the universe is. It's like, dude, that's not gonna help anything.
Fabian, was that you?
I'll leave it there because I don't want to leave this on a depressing note. But I'm like, my energy is starting to get shifted into much more like really, it's just like game time, man. Like, it's game time.
Hey, Christian, I'd like to do a yes and to what you just said. I think that in the next 5 years, the world is going to look so different from what it does now. There's this guy named Johan Galtung. He's like a peace negotiator, historian dude. He predicts that the United States is going to the United States empire will die by the year 2020. And I think that the things that you're talking about are actually what are going to happen. And I'm personally very excited about it. It's what has to happen. It has to be rapid, extreme change. So to me, like the some of our elders' roles are going to be to I think try to make it as peaceful as we can, because it could become pretty stormy pretty fast. I'm just really excited because, like, I know that when Rich says that, like, there's all this stuff happening all the time. This is true, but big times of change happen in waves, and a lot of them are demographically based. And we're about to witness the generation edge, the post-millennials come of age. They're right at voting age right now, between 18 and 25. When a generation reaches that age group, that's when change happens. So that's one of the aspects of change that's about to happen. We're going to see a massive overthrow of the old white men in all of our politics, and it's going to be exciting.
So I just one question for everyone all here. Do you guys think it's ironic that the stock market had one of the biggest single day rallies lately? I'm not watching every day, but had a 1,300 point uptick. At the same, 1.5 million homes were just destroyed due to this hurricane yesterday. Don't you think that's funny? Because I'm not laughing. Right? I mean, the timing is just hilarious when it comes to this capitalist system. I mean, it's really disturbing. Right?
I thought the market dropped 1,300 points.
No, it didn't drop. It's up 1,300 points. It dropped the day before the hurricane.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, sure. I mean, that's maybe some corruption going on there. I mean, yeah.
It's just like, dude, I mean,
I've got to jump over to the staff meeting,
yeah.
But I want to say that I do believe that we get a lot of energy from the tension between different viewpoints. So I agree that there's action that must be taken externally. And I also know that my own personal choices about the action that is taken externally improve if my inner experience improves. And it works the other way around as well. So there's a relationship between being able to be relaxed inwardly and being able to take right action outwardly. And so I don't, and I do believe it's quite mysterious, right? That there's a profound relationship between the inward governance, the self-governance of my own particular instrument, and the self-governance of a community. Those two things fit together in a very mysterious way. And so I think there's a yes and role for Esalen communities, which are focused on helping people relax a little bit, loosen up inwardly, so that they can see more possibilities outwardly. It's just, again, just my experience. But on that note, I'm going to jump over to the staff meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Well, there you have it.